Hello, everyone. Welcome to our fifth video exploring how we can cultivate mental health and spirituality in quarantine. My name is Dustin. I'm a pastor in Canton, Ohio. I'm joined by my good friend, Elisa, who is a licensed professional counselor, also from Canton, Ohio. And today we are going to be shifting gears a little bit from our last video. In our last video, we talked about the need for connection, the need to be in relationship with one another, and how when that's taken away from us, it can be traumatic. The flip side of this is we also need a space for privacy. And when privacy and access to that is taken from us, we also can experience trauma. And so we're going to be talking about that today. And Elisa, anytime I hear privacy, I start to think about this spectrum of solitude to isolation. And I was wondering if you could define those, maybe in a clinical sense, or how you relate to those two words that seem similar but have some distinct differences.
So for me, solitude definitely has a more positive connotation. So solitude, something that we see as like a spiritual discipline. So there's usually when someone says that they're going to plan some time of solitude, there's some sort of goal related to it.
Yes.
So they have a specific task in mind or a specific thing that they hope to accomplish in their time of solitude. It's also usually like a set time. So like I'm going to
Yeah.
do this retreat for like a day and a half, something like that. But isolation, on the other hand, I think is something that no one ever plans to do. Like no one ever plans to be isolated, or
Yeah.
no one ever plans to isolate from other people. It's just something that kind of happens because of like maybe you're feeling a sort of negative way towards your group of friends, or maybe something happens that like forces you to isolate. But it's something that I think people like find themselves falling into. So with isolation, also unfortunately, in how we find ourselves right now, it's for an indefinite length of time. We don't really
Yeah.
have any goals that are going to be accomplished by our time of solitude, aside from like trying to lessen the curve, like keep people healthy and stuff like that. But we hope to always accomplish something. But when you're isolated, I think it's harder to do that.
Yeah. And I think that it's helpful to be reminded of the fact that solitude is a profoundly important spiritual practice. We see that it gives us, as a discipline, an opportunity to withdraw in a proactive, healthy way, and really let go of a lot of the negative voices, negative behaviors,
Yeah.
toxicity, all those sorts of things that invade us, and really allow us to maybe meditate, be contemplative, pray, any sorts of those things to connect with God, and really center ourselves on who we are, who we're made to be, and how we orient to the world around us. And again, I'm going back to the work that you referenced from Bessel van der Kolk. There's a need for privacy. So what do you say to someone who is not home alone, but is actually trapped at home with spouse, kids, maybe housemates, and doesn't feel like they can actually get away? How can they actually practice solitude to cultivate that sort of privacy?
Yeah, so I think there's a fine line between privacy and being a jerk, you know?
Okay.
So I try to keep that in mind as I give this following tip, okay? So I think it's something that we all have to kind of like be aware of. But so one healthy practice could be to tell your family, when I'm in this chair, this is my time, or if I'm in my room and the door is shut, you need to go ask your dad,
Yeah.
trying to kind of like divide up your house so that people understand those boundaries. And then, something that could push you over the line to being a jerk or to be more like isolation minded instead of solitude minded or privacy minded is if you end up spending like 5 hours in that room with the door closed, so I think it's something like a conversation that you'll have to have with the people that you live with, like I think it's going to be from this time to this time, or like if I am in my room and the door is closed, it'll only be for like a half hour, but I do need that time to myself. But also try to limit it to so it's not like affecting your family's rhythms and stuff like that, because
Yeah.
you know if you're there but not available, and if it's for such a long period of time, like hours and hours on end, that can start to like hurt the family, and they can really feel your absence even though you're technically there.
Sure.
So Yeah, that's something that I would recommend, but keeping in mind like the good of the family, and explaining it to people like, hey, you can have your time of solitude. I need my time of solitude too. And then just like trying to have a place that you call your own, whether it's like
Yeah,
out on the patio, or, just giving yourself time to breathe makes a big difference.
that's really helpful. Going to the other end of the spectrum, to the person who's watching this who is alone in this time, and we call it social isolation, right?
Yeah.
Isolating. What can they do to say, you know what, this is the situation I have, but I want to put some practices in place so that this
Mhm.
becomes solitude, right? So that it's not a sort of
Mhm.
reactive, forced isolation, but I want to put some practices in place so that I can be mentally healthy, that I can grow spiritually, that this can be
Mhm.
something positive for me for the duration of this time. What are some of those practices?
Yeah, so two things come to mind. The first one is definitely scheduling. Even if it feels like it's forced or if it feels like it's not spontaneous, scheduling those times of things that you want to accomplish is really important to do. And
Okay.
then sticking to it, keeping it a priority. And then another thing is, I probably should have said this when we were talking about connection, but having someone that can help you put words to what you're feeling. So that could be like a friend, it could be a mentor, pastor, it could be a therapist, but someone that you can kind of like run things by, and someone that'll sit with you and be like, yeah, I would have been mad that that happened too, or like, yeah, it sucks. Having that kind of connection makes a big difference. So that would have been good for talking about connection, but now we're talking about solitude. I think, giving yourself time to like define how you're feeling. There's different tools like a feeling wheel, which is basically like a vocabulary list with like different feelings broken up into categories and stuff like that. But reading through a vocabulary list like that, again, you can Google feelings wheel and you'll see a million different colored ones. Um, but like giving yourself the time to figure out, okay, I'm not feeling mad necessarily. I'm feeling disappointed, or I'm feeling embarrassed, or I'm feeling ashamed or frustrated. And then giving yourself the time to like kind of attack and deal with those specific emotions instead of just being like, I just feel bad.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think if you're in a time of solitude, giving yourself the extra time to think about those things and put words to it gives yourself a lot of meaning, and it can help you get past it. So,
That's really, really helpful. And so, if you're watching this and you're stuck at home and you have a lot of people in the house with you, then encourage you to put in those practices that Elisa said of when I'm in this chair or in this room, this is time for me, but also don't be a jerk about it. But if you're also home alone, if you're isolated, be proactive with that time. Maybe cultivate a new practice that you haven't tried before, whether it's practicing mindfulness, meditation, contemplation, prayer, trying some of these new exercises out. Give yourself permission to do that so that this is a time where you have some agency over this time of being alone, that you actually hold on to that and have some ownership of it so that this is a time of growth for you. So thank you so much. Elisa and I are grateful for you tuning in. Hopefully this was helpful for you, and we'll see you next time.
bye.